I'm Alan Cylinder.
And I'm his daughter, Chelsea Cylinder.
We're Cylinder. And today we're here to talk about the United States versus Billie Holiday. This is a new film by Lee Daniels, and it stars Andra Day in a sensational star turn as Billie Holiday.
Yes, this is a true story. As you mentioned, it follows Billie Holiday, the famed jazz singer who was most famous in the late 30s and 40s. But this story specifically focuses on the last decade of her life from 1947 to 1959. Billie Holiday really struggled with drug abuse, and the feds were constantly after her, claiming that it was for drug abuse and drug addiction, but really it was because of racism, and they wanted to stop her from performing. Specifically, this movie focuses on the fact that she performed a song called Strange Fruit, which came out very strongly against lynching in the United States, and they did not want her singing that, and they wanted to stop her at all costs from performing that song.
This is a messy movie that's also extremely compelling. And the reason it's so watchable and compelling is because of Andra Day. This was such a find on the part of Lee Daniels, and he was so fortunate to find someone who could do justice to Billie Holiday, who is probably the greatest jazz singer of all time. But the movie's kind of all over the place and takes some missteps in its handling of some of the circumstances involved in her persecution. For instance, Harry Anslinger, who is the federal narcotics agent who was really after her, is portrayed by Garrett Hedlund in a kind of a one-dimensional note. No shading at all, and it just feels like it's out of a bad B-movie. Also, it focuses on some of the horrible men in her life who were very abusive toward her, but it doesn't really flesh them out. The only character it really fleshes out, and too much so, is a character played by Trevante Rhodes, who is a federal agent that she ends up having an affair with. But there's much too much of that in the film, I thought, and that's not written particularly well. In fact, the writing is probably the film's weakest link, because directorially, the film really has a lot of energy. And I just really enjoyed this film, despite its flaws.
Yeah, I really agree with everything you just said, and I was going to jump in that I agree that the weakest part of this movie is the writing, which is really surprising. The movie's written by Susan Laurie Parks, who's a pretty accomplished playwright and has a lot of screenplays under her belt as well. So I was pretty surprised when I thought that the writing needed to be stronger in this movie. I actually thought that some of the writing of the scenes took away from the film actually having a big impact and making it seem like a really meaty movie, which was a little bit disappointing, but overall I agree the movie's really compelling. It's a very interesting story. Billie Holiday's a fascinating character, and Andra Day was fantastic. She also does all of her own singing in the movie, which is very impressive, and she does a very good Billie Holiday impression as well.
Yes, the musical passages in the film are among the film's best sequences. She also has a monologue toward the end of the film in the hospital that's just, remarkable, I thought. And he doesn't whitewash Billie Holiday either, which is good. Let me also say that he starts the film with a framing story that he kind of forgets about. He comes back to it every now and then, but for the most part he forgets about it. And the framing story is really awful. And it gets the film off to a bad note, but after that the film takes off and it's quite enjoyable. And I can't say enough about Andra Day. She is really a revelation. This movie is currently streaming on Hulu. It was made by Paramount, destined for a theatrical release at Christmas, but because of the pandemic, they decided to sell it to Hulu. I would give this movie 3.5 cylinders.
I would also give this movie 3.5 cylinders.
The United States versus Billie Holiday. This is Alan Cylinder.
And Chelsea Cylinder.
Saying see you at the movies.
Bye!